Hello everyone. Let's start our today's discussion. Today we will have discussion on 20 professional skills marks included in Advanced Audit and Assurance exam. As you all know, that in Advanced Audit and Assurance exam, 80 marks are relating to technical knowledge of auditing and 20 marks are relating to professional skills. Now, what is included in these professional skills marks and how we have to gain these marks? All of these issues will be discussed in today's class. Now, the first thing which you all have to understand is that these professional skills marks will not be a separate requirement in your examination. The examiner says that students will have to attempt 80 marks requirements only. Those 80 marks requirements which are relating to their auditing knowledge. They just have to make sure that they attempt those 80 marks requirements in a professional manner to get these additional 20 marks also. Now, this means that students have to attempt their answers of audit planning, audit report, matters to consider, and other topics of auditing in a professional manner to get these extra 20 marks. Every point you will write in your examination will be marked twice. Once from the perspective of technical knowledge of auditing and assurance, and second, from the perspective of professional skills. Now, what does these professional skills mean? This means 4 skills which students have to make sure. They have to communicate in a proper manner. They have to make sure that their analysis and evaluation is good. Their skepticism and judgment is good. And their answers present commercial acumen or commercial sense. Now, what does these professional skills mean? We will discuss them in detail in today's session. Okay? Now, let's look at the revised paper structure, which is applicable in your examination. AAA exam hold 80 technical marks and 20 professional marks. Students have to attempt 80 technical marks in a professional manner to get complete 100 marks. Now, what does these technical marks means? Technical marks means knowledge about your audit planning, your audit activity, audit report, ethics, other assignment, all of the topics which you study during your course. You have to attempt only 80 marks requirements in your examination. This means, like, for example, if you are attempting a 25 marks requirement relating to audit risk. Now, this 25 marks requirement which you are attempting relating to audit risk, you have to make sure that you develop your answer in a professional manner. So you will get 20% extra marks. And those 20% extra marks will be included in your professional skills marks. All of the questions in your Advanced Audit and Assurance exam will include 80 marks requirements only. 20% additional marks will be given to the students when they will attempt those answers in a professional manner. Now the question is that, sir, whether these professional skills marks is a good thing or it's a bad thing. It is a very positive thing from exam point of view and also from practical point of view. See, now in the examination, you don't have to attempt 100 marks because you will only have requirements of 80 marks, which you will attempt. And if you will attempt those 80 marks requirements in a professional manner, you will get 20 additional marks. So this will improve your time management. You have greater time per mark which you are attempting in your examination. The total time is same, 3 hours and 15 minutes. But earlier, you used to have 100 marks requirements of auditing. But now you will only have 80 marks requirements of auditing. You just need to make sure that you answer them in a professional manner. You use headings, subheadings, you use better analysis, evaluation, your judgments are better, you give reasoned explanation, you make sure that your answer is justifiable from commercial point of view, and you will get additional 20 marks. Now, these all are the issues which we always make sure while we develop our answers. But we will now make sure that we look at these professional skills in more detail. In today's class, we will have a theoretical discussion on these professional skills. And then we will have a series of past paper sessions in which I will attempt complete papers with you. And I will guide you that how you have to attempt your auditing marks in a professional manner. Okay? Now, professional marks will not be a separate requirement. It will be marked along with technical marks. This means that every content which students develop will be marked twice. Once from perspective of technical skills and second from professional skills perspective. Now, what does this mean? Now, for example, if you will write an audit risk point, if you are writing an accounting standard issue, the examiner will first look at it from technical knowledge perspective. That whether you have explained the complete accounting standard, whether you have identified the risk properly or not. And then he will look at it that whether you drafted it in a professional manner. So the same paragraph which you are developing will be marked twice. Once from technical knowledge perspective and second from professional skills perspective. Okay? Total time of exam is same 3 hours and 15 minutes. But per mark time allocation has increased as students will now be attempting 80 technical marks in a professional manner to get complete 100 marks. Now see, what I'm trying to say is that you will only answer 80 marks requirements in your examination. Okay, the requirements which you will be getting will not be of 100 marks. They will only be of 80 marks. What you have to make sure is that you attempt those 80 marks requirements in a professional manner and get 20 additional marks. Earlier, if I talk about 1 or 2 years back, in AAA exam, there used to be only 4 professional marks. Increase in professional marks is good from exam perspective, as per mark time allocation will increase. And also from practical life perspective, as students will learn to communicate professionally. Obviously, when you will go to audit firms or to companies, it is very important that you know this skill of professional communication. Okay? So, what you need to understand is that now you have 3 hours and 15 minutes, which means 195 minutes in your examination. Okay? And in these 195 minutes, you will answer only 80 marks requirements, which if you divide, this means 195 divided by 80 marks, it is almost 2.4 minutes per mark. Okay? So you have greater time per mark. So your time management will improve and it will help you to complete your examination. Okay. Now, what is included in these professional skills? This includes good communication, a skill of analysis and evaluation, skepticism and judgment, and commercial acumen. Now, what is included in these professional skills and how we have to gain marks in these, we will have discussion on this now. Okay. Now, the first skill is communication. See, in Advanced Audit and Assurance exam, communication is very important. Because when you will look at your exam paper, the examiner usually makes a student an audit manager. He makes a student an audit manager and he asks him to communicate with the audit partner. When you are an audit manager and you are communicating with the audit partner, you have to make sure that you communicate in an impressive manner. You shouldn't be communicating in a very basic manner because you are talking to an audit partner and he already knows basic things. Now, a very routine mistake which students make in our advanced audit and assurance exam, that their answers are not impressive. At advanced audit and assurance level, I always say to my students that it is not about writing a right or a wrong answer. It is about writing an impressive answer. Your answer should look like that an audit manager is communicating. It shouldn't look like a communication of an audit junior or an audit supervisor. You should be communicating like an audit manager. You should have good knowledge. Your analysis and evaluation should be detailed. And you shouldn't be going in very basic things. Because when you are talking to audit partner, he's a senior level. He already knows these basic things. Like if you will explain that what an engagement letter is or what an audit report is, that is something which is very basic. That shows that an audit junior is making communication. But in the advanced audit and assurance exam, it is expected that a student communicate like an audit manager. Now, a very important question. That, sir, how can we improve our communication skill? Now, what is expected in communication skill? We'll discuss it in the today's class. I will discuss the key points. But the most important thing is practice and taking the feedback from your tutor. I always say to my students that attempt complete papers and take feedback from me. Send me your paper, send me your scripts. I will mark them. I will give you a feedback that how you have to improve your communication skill. Okay, now there is some content which the ACCA has provided us about communication, and then there are some key points which I have identified for my students. Let's first go through that what ACCA has told us about communication, and then we will read the key points which I have identified for you. Section A question in AAA always asks for a set of briefing notes. See, you all know that in question number 1, you have to make a format of the question. In AAA question, you will have a format of a briefing note. Now, what is included in the format of briefing note? We will discuss it in the key points when we will move towards that. Okay. So section A question in AAA always asks for a set of briefing notes requested by an audit engagement partner or a senior manager, which addresses key matters facing the engagement team at the planning stage of an audit. So the first thing which you have to make sure is that you present your answer in a proper format. How you have to prepare the briefing notes, you have to understand that. Okay? This report should have appropriate headings, subheadings, a brief introduction which explains the content of the report to follow. Candidates' response in the body of the report should look professional. Use appropriate language and be clear and effective. It is vital that report content is relevant to the requirements, including adhering to any specific requirements given in the examination. See, sometimes the examiner specifically says that you have to ignore risk relating to this particular area. Like, for example, I remember that once there was a question relating to an agricultural entity. But the question clearly stated that you have to ignore the risk relating to biological assets. Now, when the question has given any specific instructions, you have to adhere to it. Adhere means you have to comply with it. And this is very important in communication. Did you understand that what the question is asking you? For example, if the examiner has asked you to write audit procedure relating to valuation only, then your audit procedures should be focused on valuation only. Now, what students do is that they don't read the requirement carefully. Now, what will happen is that you will lose marks in technical area also because your answer will be irrelevant, and you will also lose marks in professional skills. Double marking of each point is positive and negative both. When you will write any content, the examiner will mark it from the technical aspect and also from the professional skill aspect. This is helpful while gaining the marks and also dangerous while losing the marks. If you will not read the requirements carefully, okay, you will not comply with the instructions given in the requirement, what will happen is that you will lose marks in the technical area because your answer will be irrelevant. And you will also lose marks in professional skills because the examiner will say that student lacks a skill of communication. He cannot read it, he cannot understand it, what I'm saying to him. And obviously, communication is a two-way process. So in section A question, there will be marks relating to communication. First, you have to make sure that you make a proper format of the briefing notes. You give headings, subheadings, you give an introduction that what the answer is about. Okay, your answer should use appropriate language. It should be professional. Now, what does this professional means? The answer shouldn't be haphazard. Now, what does this haphazard? Sometimes the student's answer is all mixed up. They do part D first, they do part C first. This means the answer is haphazard. You should always attempt part A, then part B, then part C, then part D. And the exam is computer based. Even if you are attempting part D first, you can cut it and paste it at a later portion so that the answer appears in a logical flow. When you are writing risk, always first identify it, then write its impact, then give an evaluative comment, then give a response to that risk. It should be in a structured manner. If you write a response first and you identify it at a later part, this means that it is not in a logical flow. Be clear and effective. Be assertive in your answer. Like it should be very clear that what you are trying to say. What student is that they confuse the examiner. The examiner cannot understand that what the student is trying to say. That communication skill is not clear. And then you have to adhere. Adhere means comply to the specific instructions given by the examiner. Okay, so these two paragraphs are provided by ACCA relating to communication skill in Advanced Audit and Assurance exam. Now, there are some key points which I have developed for my students. See, the communication skill will only be examined in question number 1, which is a 50 marks question. In question number 1, which is a 50 marks question, 40 marks will be relating to technical knowledge and 10 marks will be relating to professional skills. In those 10 professional skills in question number 1, maximum 4 marks will be relating to communication. Okay. See, if I give you a breakup, one column is technical marks and second is professional marks. Okay. In question number 1, there will be 40 marks relating to technical knowledge and 10 marks relating to professional skills. In question number 2, 20 marks relating to technical knowledge and 5 marks relating to professional skills. And in question number 3, 20 marks relating to technical knowledge and 5 marks relating to professional skills. Now, these professional skills marks will not be a separate requirement. You will just attempt requirements relating to technical marks in a professional manner to get these professional marks in bonus. Okay, they will be a gift for you if you attempt technical marks in a professional manner. Now, in question number 1, in these 10 professional marks, 4 marks will be relating to communication. What about remaining 6 marks? Those will be relating to analysis and evaluation, skepticism and judgment, and commercial acumen. Okay. In question 2 and 3, there will be no marks relating to communication. So in question 2 and 3, these 5 professional marks will relate it to be analysis and evaluation, skepticism and judgment, and commercial acumen. Okay. I will repeat it again. See, the first professional skill which is expected from students is good communication. This communication skill will be evaluated in question number 1 only. In question number 1, you have 40 technical marks and 10 marks relating to professional skills. In these professional skills, 4 marks will be allocated to good communication. Okay. Now, communication skill requires understanding of whom we are communicating with, whether he is a manager, partner, colleague, or a subordinate. His position and level of knowledge should always be considered when drafting an answer. At AAA level, normally communication is with audit partner and student has to act as an audit manager. Writing an impressive answer of audit manager level communication is very important. Okay, so writing an answer which is of audit manager level is very important for communication skill. Are you getting it? So normally when we are communicating with anyone, it is very important that we understand that who he is, whether he's a manager, whether he's a partner, he's a subordinate, or he's a colleague. We look at his level of understanding and then we communicate with him. But at AAA level, we are normally communicating with an audit partner who is a senior level. So we have to make sure that we communicate in an impressive manner. Okay? In question number 1, the examiner will always ask student to make briefing notes. Now, what is a format of a briefing note? You give a heading of briefing note. 2 normally is to the audit partner. You write the name of the partner if it is given. From, normally it's an audit manager. Subject, client name, and what we are doing. Like for example, Grohol Company Audit Plan, Connolly Company Audit Planning, Rick Group Audit Planning, what is the name of the company and what we are doing. Then you give a brief introduction. Okay, you all know that it is very specific, it is very fixed, that in relation to audit planning of XYZ company for the year end, XYZ, following information is relevant for evaluation of. And you refer all the requirements briefly, like for evaluation of audit risk, comma, audit procedures on XYZ head, ethical issues which need to be considered. Okay, so the introduction should refer the client name, the year end, and all the requirements in a brief manner. The introduction shouldn't be very much detailed, it should be brief. Okay, now see, in today's class, I'm just explaining the theoretical aspect of these skills. But after the today's session, we will have series of sessions in which we will discuss multiple past papers so that you can understand that how I apply these professional skills in a complete exam paper. We'll do multiple papers, I'll draft answer with you people, and then I will give you mock exams, which you have to attempt on your own and send me for the marking and feedback. Okay? It is important to understand what is asked in the question and to answer it specifically. Don't write extra things, don't write general comments. Be very specific and precise. This is very important in communication skill. See, when we talk about communication in normal life also, communication involves a good listening skill. Now, in the examination, the examiner is talking to you through the exam paper. So it is very important that you listen to him, that what he is saying. Just think about a guy who don't listen and then start speaking randomly. So you will say that your communication is so bad because you cannot listen to what I'm saying. You cannot understand what I'm saying. How can you do a good audit? How you can be a part of a good team when you cannot listen, when you cannot communicate, when you cannot understand that what I'm saying to you. Okay? Demonstrate that you have complete knowledge of the issue by explaining relevant rules and concepts also. Like, for example, if any accounting issue is getting involved, you should explain the accounting standard also, that what the accounting standard is saying about it. Okay? A brief introduction should be given of all requirements in start of the answer, as I told you, that a brief introduction should be given. And then at the end of the answer, you can give a conclusion also. That is also very good. So in a briefing notes format, you give a heading of briefing notes, to, from, subject, a brief introduction, and then a conclusion at the end of your answer. Okay? Give headings and subheadings. Like, for example, if you're writing audit risk, you should give a heading of audit risk. Then you should give subheadings for each of the risks. Attempt requirements in sequence. Don't mix up the question. Be clear and develop points logically and progressively. What do you mean by progressively? What do you mean by logically? First, you identify the risk. Then you explain its impact, that what will it do? Then you give an evaluation, like you use the numbers to evaluate it. Then you give some response, that how the auditor can reduce that risk. This is a logical and a progressive flow. Identify, impact, evaluation. And if you have some response, then write that response. Don't mix everything. Answers should not be haphazard. It shouldn't be confusing. List the points according to their significance. Now, what do you mean by this? Like, for example, if you're writing 10 audit risks, the examiner don't say that you have to list all 10 in a sequence. Just write the significant risk at the start, like the 3-4 most important risks should be written at the start. He don't expect that all 10 risks should be according to the significance, like most significance and down. No, that is not expected, because then it will become very much subjective. The examiner says that just write the significant risk at the start, like the 3-4 most important issues should be written at the start. And then in the rest, if the things get a bit up and down also, that is not an issue. However, it is to note that all points don't need to be sequenced. Just the significant points should be written first. Avoid repetition of data from question. This is very important. I always say to my students that examiner will have a question paper in his hand. So don't repeat the things. If you're repeating the things, you are wasting your time. And now you will lose marks for communication skill also, because you are just saying things again and again. Okay? Use factual data, use numbers, refers to the facts in the question, and be focused. What do you mean by factual data? Like you should refer the number, okay, that sales are increasing by this much percentage. The margins are changing. You should be factual. You should be relating to it. Like, for example, if you are saying that the license may get cancelled, if there is any situation in the question in which the license has got cancelled in actual, you have to refer that situation. Be factual, be assertive. Okay? Don't provide extra information on irrelevant areas. For example, some issues may not be the main focus of the question. See, this is very important. Many students say that, sir, in our opinion, this thing should be included in the answer, but it is not included in the marking scheme. Sometimes the students read the question and they think that a particular risk should be included, but it is not part of the marking scheme. When it is not part of the marking scheme, you will not be marked on it. Okay? So, how to identify that what will be included in marking scheme and what will not be included? The most important skill is to understand the focus of the question, that what the entire question is targeting on. There are some areas which are just given as a support information. So don't get involved in that support information. Try and identify the risk from the issues which are the main focus of the question. Similarly, when you are writing the audit procedures, look at what the examiner is trying to ask. Okay, so don't get diverted on extra information. Look at the main focus of the question relating to which the examiner has provided the greater detail. Read requirements carefully. Okay, otherwise, just think about a normal person that you are talking to someone, you tell him something, and then he starts speaking irrelevant things. So he'll say that he don't know the professional skill. He don't know how to communicate because he cannot listen. If the requirement is for particular exhibit only, then don't use other exhibits while answering it. See, it is very normal that the examiner says that only use exhibit 2 for answering this part. Only use exhibit 4 for answering this part. So when he is clearly said to look at that particular exhibit, then don't run throughout the question. Just look at that exhibit only. If question says to ignore any risk or area, do ignore it. Use proper language. Ability to break requirements and simplify. Like, for example, if there is any accounting standard issue involved, you have to break it. For example, if I take an example of IFRS leases, First, we identify the category of the lease. Okay, that whether we'll book a right to use asset or we will book it as an expense. Then we move towards its treatment. So go step by step. Okay, break the answer, make it simplified. Use proper tools, word processor and spreadsheet. Okay, this is very important. If you are using the spreadsheet, see, spreadsheet is not the main content. Your main content is in the word processor, the Word document which you develop in the question. Now, if you are using a spreadsheet at any point, you should give a clear reference that refers spreadsheet working one. So the examiner can know that where he have to look at the spreadsheet. What the students do is that they use the spreadsheet and there is no reference given in the word process. Obviously, the examiner will either miss it out, or even if he will look at it, he will get annoyed. Okay, he will give you a mark in technical head, but he will deduct your professional skills marks. If answering to a partner, don't explain basic things. Okay, don't explain him that what the engagement letter is. Don't explain him that what materialities. He already knows that what materialities. Just give a calculation of materiality. Just tell him the range of the materiality, that okay, this is material in this client. Don't start explaining that materiality means a level at which the opinion will get affected. He already knows, he's an audit partner. Just talk relevant to the client. 3 points to remember when looking at communication skill. Use proper format. Look at the understanding level of the audience and how much information they need. If you're talking to a partner, he already have much of the information. Don't talk too much basic. If you're talking to a supervisor, if you're talking to a junior, look at his information level. Are you answering requirements clearly and complete? Don't miss out the things. Make sure that you answer your requirement in a complete and a specific manner. So, what we have talked till now is that in Advanced Audit and Assurance exam, there are 20 professional skills marks. These professional skills marks will not be a separate requirement. You will only have 80 marks requirements in your exam. And those 80 marks will be relating to auditing. What you have to make sure is that you attempt those 80 marks requirements in a professional manner to get these extra 20 marks. Okay? The first skill, communication, make proper format, give headings, subheadings, use proper language. Okay? So we have discussed that what this communication skill will include. See, this is just the theoretical content, that how we have to gain these communication skill marks. When we will move towards the complete past paper sessions from the next class, it will be series of sessions. We will apply this skill and I will guide you that, okay, here we have gained the communication skill. Here we are analyzing it. Here we are evaluating it. Here is a commercial acumen point. Okay. Now, the second professional skill is analysis and evaluation. Now, what is this professional skill? Let's look at it. Okay. In analysis and evaluation skill, it is very important that you don't write general points in your exam answer. You should be relating your points to the exam scenario, and you should be evaluating it from different perspectives. If there is any support which is possible from the numbers given in the exam, like the data of sales, profit margin, expenses, if you can use those numbers to support the points which you are writing, that will contribute towards marks of analysis and evaluation. This is one of the most important professional skills at Advanced Audit and Assurance exam, that students should have an ability to analyze the things in detail and they should evaluate it from different perspectives. The points which are in favor and the points which are in against, both should be argued in the examination. What students do is that, for example, they are writing a risk. They only write those comments which increase the risk and they ignore the other side. Okay, the points in the question which can reduce the risk, they ignore those points. Now, this is against analysis and evaluation. The examiner says that you should have an ability to comment from both sides. Now, this is evaluation, that those points which increase the risk and those comments which reduce the risk. Okay, like for example, if you're writing a point that company has spent too much on the marketing and this can create cash flow issues. Okay, so you are evaluating it from the perspective that, okay, it can create cash flow issues. But if in the question there is any possibility of any cash inflow, so you should refer that also, that through these cash inflows or increased sales, we may be able to manage the cash outflows which we are doing. Okay, so analysis and evaluation relate to the scenario, evaluate it from the both perspective, like one from the favor and one from against. Okay, so you should be commenting on the risk on your points. Like for example, if you're writing audit report or you are writing an answer on ethics or quality control. So if there are any points which create quality issues and any points which reduce quality issues, you should have an ability to discuss both of them. Okay, now let's read that what the ACCA has told us about analysis and evaluation, and then we look at the key points which I have extracted for you people. All AAA questions will include this professional skill as it is fundamental. That candidates can demonstrate their assessment of a given scenario and application of their knowledge. Okay, now the rules which you are writing, you should be able to relate it to the scenario. Now, a very important mistake which students do, they write general accounting treatments. They don't relate the accounting standard to the question's scenario. Relate it, use the name of the client, use the asset which is purchased, use the amounts which have been spent. Now, this will give you a credit of analysis that you are applying the rules which you are stating in the answer. The scenario will require an assessment of financial reporting issues of the client, the ethical or legal and regulatory issues, and their impact on the audit process. This may be at the audit planning or completion and reporting stage of the audit. So candidates need to ensure that any recommendation for further actions are relevant to the point of engagement. Now, see, what does this mean? See, the auditor performs audit in three phases. One is planning phase, one is during audit, and the last one is finalization phase. In all of these phases, your actions are different. For example, if you identify a misstatement at audit planning phase, you consider it as a risk. If you identify a misstatement during audit activity, you recommend extra procedure, you perform greater audit work. But if the same thing is at the finalization phase, you will force the client for an adjustment, or you will talk with those charged with governance that it can impact the audit report. Now, for example, if a student identifies a misstatement at planning phase, and at that point he is writing that I will modify audit opinion. Now, this means that he is not able to understand the question, that at which stage he is involved in. At audit planning phase, you don't talk about modification of audit report. At audit planning phase, you plan audit procedures, you identify the risk, you take greater samples, okay? You increase your detection risk, okay? Now that is auditing phase. In auditing phase, you don't talk that, okay, I will give adverse opinion. So if a student cannot understand the phase of the audit in which he is currently, this means that he is not analyzing the question in a proper manner. Okay. It is important that candidates ensure that any analysis or evaluation is contextual. What do you mean by contextual? That it relates to the scenario. Don't write general comments or general rules, and must take into account the situation in which the organization in the question operates. Okay, so relate it to the scenario. Don't write generic comments. Analysis can be demonstrated by appropriate use of information to determine suitable calculation. Like, for example, if revenue is increasing, you have to refer that, okay, revenue has increased by this percentage, profit margins, change in operating expenses, change in gearing. You should be able to relate it, okay, to support your evaluation. The ability to draw appropriate conclusions from analysis should be demonstrated so that appropriate responses or actions can be proposed. For example, if you have identified a misstatement, okay, you will support it with the numbers that, okay, the numbers are also showing that there is a misstatement. I'll just give you an example. For example, if you are talking about capitalization of borrowing cost, just think about IS 23, capitalization of borrowing cost. And if in the income statement, the interest expense is increasing, so this means that the management has not capitalized the borrowing cost, rather they have expensed it out. So you refer an amount, you refer the numbers given in the question. And then you will conclude that, okay, it can be concluded that there is a misstatement. This is overstated, this is understated. And then you will give a recommendation that now what should be the action. Like at audit planning phase, you will say that auditor will investigate it further, auditor will perform greater procedures, he will plan greater procedures for audit activity. If we are during audit activity, we'll take the documents, like we'll take the breakup of interest expense recorded, we'll take the breakup of capitalization cost. During audit activity, we have access to the documents. And at finalization phase, we talk about modification in opinion, discussion with those charged with governance. So you should be able to understand that in which stage of audit we are standing. Okay. And you should be able to conclude your things that, okay, this is the risk. It can be supported by the numbers. And now this auditor should be doing. Identifying where data or information appears to be omitted or where further analysis is needed to make a recommendation is also important. Like, for example, if there is any limitation of the data, so you should be able to identify that currently this information is not available to form any conclusion. Okay, as that means that full evaluation cannot be performed. For example, understanding the basis of provision and understanding how the audit team can gain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences in the circumstances. If there is any limitation of the data, you have to identify that also. An evaluation is a balanced appraisal to determine the impact of a course of action. For example, if a client does not amend a material misstatement in financial statement, candidates need to be able to explain the implications on the auditor's report. So you should have an ability to explain its impact. But obviously, that impact will be according to the audit phase in which you are currently. Okay, so the second professional skill, which is most important at advanced audit and assurance level, is analysis and evaluation. You should have a good skill to analyze the question. Now, what do you mean by analyze the question? That you can identify the data from different aspects, from different heads. Now, what students do is, listen to me, that they read a paragraph and they write a risk. There is nothing wrong in it. But one thing which you need to make sure is that when you read the later part of the question, and if you identify any extra information, you should go and edit your point. Okay, so that the examiner can have a feeling that, okay, the student has read the complete question and then he developed the risk. Listen to me. There are two approaches. First, read the entire scenario and then start writing. This is one approach. Second approach is read the question and start writing along with it. But when you are following the second approach, it saves time because you are writing along with it. But in this second approach, the important thing is that when you read through the scenario, many times you find some additional information which can be supported in your risk. So you should go and add those points. You should have the flexibility to edit your points so that the examiner can feel that, okay, the student have done analysis and he has looked at the entire scenario. He has looked at the bigger picture. You should have ability to conclude, to give recommendations, which is the evaluation point. You should be able to talk in favor and against both, the pros and cons. Okay, like for example, if you're writing a risk, so the points which increase the risk and the points which reduce the risk, you should discuss all of them. You shouldn't be biased in your answer. You should use the entire data. And the most important thing, you should be able to understand that at which stage of audit we are currently. Okay, now there are some key points which I have identified for you people in relation to analysis and evaluation. Okay. Now, this professional skill can be examined in all questions. That it can be in question number 1, in question 2, 3. It will be part of all the questions. Very important skill to analyze and evaluate the data. It is important to consider client-specific information when developing an answer. Don't write general comments. Okay? Now, it is essential for students to understand that to which stage of audit question relates to. For example, if question is for planning stage, then actions and recommendations should be relating to planning stage. Like, for example, at planning stage, the question number 1 is audit planning question. If we identify an issue, we plan greater procedures. We plan greater audit work. We don't talk about audit opinion at planning stage. In contrast, if question is in relation to completion phase, then actions to be taken should be advised accordingly. Support your arguments with numbers to gain marks in relation to analysis. Try if you can use the gearing ratio, the changes in assets. Like, for example, if I give you an example, if the goodwill number in the balance sheet is constant, so this creates a risk that maybe management has not done the impairment review on goodwill. So you can write, you can refer the numbers that the goodwill balance on the balance sheet is constant in both years. This creates a risk that maybe the management has not done impairment review. So refer the numbers related to the scenario. Explain accounting standard treatments in detail when issues relating to financial reporting. You should be good at your accounting knowledge because obviously auditor has to audit financial statements and financial statements are according to accounting standards. So you should have good knowledge of accounting standard. Advise actions to be taken when issues are identified. Just don't pick out the issues and leave them. When you identify a risk, when you identify an issue, always write that what an auditor should do in relation to. For example, if any audit risk is identified, then suggest its possible solution also. Similarly, if client is not making an amendment of required adjustment, then suggest actions to be taken by auditor also. Evaluate the scenario from favor and adverse situation. I already discussed it. That you shouldn't be biased in your answering. You should be evaluating in an open manner. For example, in accounting standard implication, discuss points which are in support and against both. For example, in IFRS 16, conditions, some may be satisfied and some may not be. So you should have an ability to discuss both of them. Similarly, if you are talking about impairment of assets, so you should be talking about the things which create the impairment situation and heads which reduce the situation of impairment. You should be discussing all of them. Draw appropriate conclusion of your issues and discussion. Don't leave your answer subjective. Don't leave your answer subjective. Okay, you should have an ability to conclude that, okay, here is the misstatement. These heads will be misstated. Even the examiner says that if the students want, he can refer his accounting standard issues, like the conclusion which he is drawing, he can refer the double entry also. That, okay, this double entry should be done to correct it. So you should be very absolute in when you are identifying the issues. Okay, like you should identify the heads clearly. What the students do is that balance sheet will be overstated. Now, what in the balance sheet will be overstated? Assets will be overstated. No, go to the specific head. That in assets, intangible assets will be overstated. Development cost head will be overstated. You should be absolute and you should be able to draw conclusions. If any data is missing for complete evaluation, highlight the data which is missing. Write in the answer, like, for example, if you're writing to an audit partner, you can write that, okay, this data is not available currently, so we cannot form any conclusions relating to it. Support your judgments with numbers, evidences, and facts. Explain implications of recommendations you make, which include specific actions that should be taken. Like, for example, if you are saying that if the management will not modify the adjustment, now what should the auditor be doing? He should discuss with those charged with governance. He has to think about the integrity of the client, that why they are not adjusting it. You can think about the resignation situation, that if the client lacks integrity, how can we do audit? So you should explain the actions of, like, just don't throw the issues out. Okay. Calculation of relevant trends and ratios. Examiner expects underpinning technical knowledge along with their application. Now, what some students do is that they just write the rules. They don't relate it. They don't apply it. So just those rules are of no use. When you are writing any rule, relate it to the client situation, refer the name of the asset, refer the names of the client, refer the dates, refer amounts. I'll just give you an example. For example, if there is a purchase of an asset and you write an audit procedure, review bank statement to verify purchase of asset. It's incomplete. Review bank statement to verify purchase of an asset. It's incomplete. Review bank statement to verify amount paid XYZ against the purchase of XYZ asset to verify its purchase value. Be detailed. Use the question data, refer the amounts, refer the dates, refer the name of the asset. Be specific. Don't write general comments. Answers should be 100% contextual. When developing audit procedure, don't use general procedures. They should be specific to scenario and relate to the information provided in the question. So this will help you gain the analysis marks. That, okay, you read the scenario and you analyzed it well. You had the ability to analyze it. And then evaluation, talk from favorable and against things both, give recommendations, ability to conclude it, that is evaluation. Okay, so the first professional skill, good communication. Second, most important, analysis and evaluation. Apply your knowledge, analyze the question data, relate the entire scenario. Don't just limit yourself to certain paragraphs. Apply the entire scenario. Look in the entire scenario if there is anything which can be related to it. Okay, you should have an ability to evaluate, talk in favor and against both, give conclusions, give recommendations. Okay, I'll say it again. See, in the today's class, we are just talking about these professional skills in a theoretical aspect. From the next class, when we'll be doing the series of past papers, I will apply these professional skills and I will tell you, okay, see, here I have applied the professional skill. Okay. The third skill is skepticism and judgment. You all know that skepticism means ability to question. You shouldn't be accepting everything in its available form. You should have an ability to question the things. Skepticism, ability to question. And judgment. Judgment means that being an auditor, you should have a skill to form reasoned judgments. Reasoned judgment means that every judgment, every conclusion you are reaching, you should have a reason behind it. You should have a skill to form a judgment. Like, for example, if the client is not making an adjustment, if the client is not making a correction, you will say that, okay, we'll go for a modification in opinion. That is your judgment. You will say that, okay, if the client is not making a modification, we will think about integrity of the client, that why he's not making the required adjustment. And maybe you can write a judgment that will consider about resignation from the client. So judgment is a very important skill for auditors. In the professional environment, they can make a reasoned judgment, which they can justify. So the third professional skill is skepticism and judgment. Skepticism means to question the data. Skepticism means to question the data. Now, sir, what do we mean by question the data? For example, if the management is saying that sales will grow by 15%, use your mind. Management is saying they are biased. You should have skepticism to question it. But one very important thing, don't question everything. Now, what do you mean by don't question everything? For example, if in bank statement, the balance is $1,000, you start questioning it that how can I rely on the bank statement? See, that is wrong. When we talk about skepticism, it is professional skepticism. You should have an ability to question till a limited extent. We question internal data. We question management claims, but we don't question external data. For example, if I've taken a receivable confirmation and the debtor is saying that, okay, the balance is $1 million. You said that, okay, how can I rely on him? Maybe he's biased. Now, that is something which is wrong. When you are talking about external evidence, we don't question those things. Because in audit also you study that external evidences are reliable. But when it is about management claims, you should have a skill of skepticism. And judgment means an ability to make right conclusions. Okay, you should have an ability to make right conclusion that, okay, when I will modify the opinion, okay, when I will consider this risk as significant. Okay, so you should have a skill of making good judgments. A good judgment is one in which there is a basis, a reasoned judgment, and you should have an ability of skepticism. Candidates are expected to demonstrate professional skepticism and judgment when assessing the information given in the scenario. This is key when asked to evaluate significant risk in a scenario or challenging the information which has been provided. In line with the revision and introduction of spectrum of risk in ISA 315, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatements, candidates will need to demonstrate their application of professional judgment by prioritizing the risk. Now, what do you mean by prioritizing the risk? Like, for example, if you're writing multiple risk, then you should have an ability to write significant risk first. Okay, this applies on audit risk or risk of material misstatement only. Okay, in their answers, candidates should be prioritizing the most significant risk first and a brief conclusion justifying their decision. Now, see, in audit planning, we study that we should have an ability to prioritize the risk, that we should write important risk, the significant risk first. See, when we are prioritizing the risk, obviously, this is use of judgment. Okay. Now, one very important thing. See, the knowledge of ISA 315 is not required specifically in the exam. Okay. You should know that what ISA 315 says. You should know that what ISA 315 says, but it is not important that you refer that, okay, I am doing this due to ISA 315. Okay, the examiner says that the student should have a knowledge that what ISA 315 has said, that it has told us that you have to prioritize the risk. You have to write them according to the significance, practically also. Like whenever you are doing audit planning, you should write significant risk first. But it is not required that in the examination you write that, okay, I am doing prioritization according to ISA 315. Because referring ISAs specifically is not required in the examination. This applies on accounting standards also. Like you should know that what IS 38 is saying. You should know that what IS 36 is saying. But when writing the answer, you are not required to refer that, okay, this is said by IS 36. You can write that according to the accounting standard. Or the management should do this. Okay. So it is not required that you refer the standard number. But obviously, you should have the knowledge that what the auditing standards say. So in relation to judgment, when you are writing risk, prioritizing the risk is obviously a skill of judgment. Information may come from the client, such as in the basis for provision or the basis of amortization or purchase of intangible asset. So if the information is coming from the client, from the management, you should have the skill of skepticism, that you should question its reliability. Other scenarios may ask the candidate to review the audit work and evidences obtained during audit engagement, assess whether it is sufficient to support a decision or information in an auditor's report. Because in quality control questions, if you remember the questions of quality control, in quality control questions, the examiner usually make a question in a way that he say that, okay, your team member has done this audit work. Okay, he has obtained these evidences. So here you have to use your skill of skepticism and judgment that whether the audit work which has already been done is sufficient in your judgment, okay, is sufficient, and whether you want to question it further. Similarly, when we are talking about group audits, so there can be a situation that the examiner says that, okay, component auditor has obtained these evidences. So again, both skills are involved. Whether you want to question further. Okay. Now, what do you mean by question further? That whether you have to use your skepticism skill to get more evidences, and the judgment skill, that whether you want to rely on. But when we talk about skepticism, it is not about questioning everything. Please make sure. Normally, the use of skepticism skill is that when the information is provided by the management, when it is the management scheme, so we question the reliability of that data. And judgment, prioritizing the risk, when modifying the opinions, when deciding actions to be taken, that is judgment. Okay. Now, some key points which I have identified for you people, let's look at it. The professional skill can be examined in all questions, this professional skill. See, except communication. Communication is only for question number 1. All other professional skills can be examined in all questions. Auditor is normally expected to perform audit work with reasonable skepticism and challenge the data provided. Now, in relation to judgment, there is one important thing which the examiner expects from you people. The examiner says that when you are attempting question number 1, the audit planning question, and when you start your risk evaluation, the first point should be on materiality. You should explain the materiality ranges that, okay, the materiality range is 5% to 10% of PBT. But you all know that this 5% to 10% is a range. Between this range, what should be the actual materiality level? That whether I should take 7% or 8% or 10% or 5%, this is auditor's judgment. So one of the points where you have to demonstrate your skill of judgment is that in question number 1, only in question number 1, when you are talking about audit planning and when you are writing your answer of risk evaluation, the first point should be materiality. In that point, you will tell that, okay, 5% to 10% of PBT in amount will be this. That, for example, if the PBT is $10 million, so he'll say that, okay, 5% is 0.5 million and 10% is $1 million. Use your mind. If your PBT in the question is $10 million, so we'll say that, okay, materiality range is 5% to 10%. 5% will be $0.5 million and 10% will be $1 million. Now, this is the range. What should be the actual materiality level? Now, that is the auditor's judgment. For example, if it is the first year of audit, there are too many risks in the question. So you will say that, okay, we are taking the lower side of materiality, that is 0.5 million. But if it is not a first year of audit, there are not too much significant risk. You can say that, okay, we will take a middle range, like you can say that we are taking $0.75 million. Now, this is the skill of judgment which you have to use in your examination. Materiality level should be evaluated at start of question when developing answer for question 1. Range of materiality should be explained, like 5% of 10% of PBT, 1 to 2% of assets, 0.5 to 1% of revenue. You quantify it in number and justified materiality level according to risk of the client should be explained. So you will write that, okay, this is the materiality range in amount, and considering the risk of the client, in my judgment, this should be the justified materiality level. So I will repeat it again. See. Now, it is about using the skill of judgment. You all know that auditing standards have defined ranges for materiality level, like 5% to 10% of PBT, 1% to 2% of assets, 0.5% to 1% of revenue. So first you will quantify those materiality ranges. That, okay, in amount, these are the ranges, because you will multiply it with the client's data. Like, for example, if assets are $100 million, so you'll write that, okay, 1% to 2% in amount will be this. And then you will use your judgment that based on my risk evaluation, this is the justified materiality level. Okay. So if my justification is wrong, then what will happen? You will lose 1 mark for justification. But obviously, when you will write a point, you will get mark for writing something. Okay. Normally, we take a lower side. Like normally, we take 0.5 million, like it's 5% of PBT. If it is 1% to 2% of assets, we take the 1% amount. Normally, we take the lower side. Because normally in the exam question, it is a first year of audit. Normally, there are too many risks, so we take a lower side. But if you think, if in the scenario, it's not a first year of audit, if in the scenario, there are not too many significant risks, so you can write that, okay, we are taking a medium threshold. Okay, but whatever threshold you are taking, you should have a justification for it. The examiner is looking for your skill to make a judgment. When answering risk questions, students should write most important risk first and give explanation of how important risks are determined. That, okay, if you're writing first three risks, so you can say that, okay, these risks are considered significant due to their amount. These risks are considered significant due to involvement of related party. So you should have a reason that why you consider those few risks as significant. It is not expected from student to prioritize all risk. Just few important risks should be written first. Like, it is not important that you make a scale of risk that, okay, important, less important, less important, less important, least important. You don't have to make a scale. You just write few important risks at the start, and for rest of them, there is no specific requirement. If any assumptions of client or colleagues are provided, students should have an ability to question the data effectively. If any additional information is required, that should be specified. It is important to understand that every information should not be. I told you this earlier also. If any evidence is external document, normally it is considered as reliable. In contrast, if any evidence is management involvement, then auditors should question reliability for it. See, in audit, normally also we say that if anything is provided by the management, we question its reliability. And that is what we say as skepticism. Okay. But if anything is provided by an external source, like a client confirmation, the debtor confirmation, the customer confirmation, the supplier confirmation, the bank confirmation, these are external documents. So normally we don't question the reliability of external documents. But if any claim is made by the management, the finance director, so we always question. Alternative tests and procedures should be advised when existing data is challenged. What we call as corroborative evidences, the supporting evidences that, okay, we should do these things to verify the reliability. Don't just rely on everything provided in question. Similarly, don't just question everything. Auditors should have a skill to determine that whether existing evidence provided are sufficient to verify any particular head and to form a conclusion. Now, obviously, this is your professional judgment that where you say that, okay, this evidence is sufficient, in my opinion, I don't need extra work. And this is your judgment when you say that, okay, we need some extra evidences, we cannot rely on these documents. So this is the judgment skill which you need to demonstrate. Now, some of you must be thinking, sir, how we will gain expertise in it? Again, today we are just having the theoretical discussion. In the series of classes, which I will start from the next class, we'll be discussing complete papers and I will apply these professional skills. I'll guide you. Okay, see, here I've applied the professional skill. Okay. Skepticism is about looking at root cause of issues identified. Students should not be looking at apparent impacts only. Time should be given to evaluate that whether what were the root causes of issues which have happened and what can be potential impacts. For example, if the audit partner is not doing sufficient review, sometimes we say that, okay, if the audit partner is not doing sufficient review, he requires some training sessions. Maybe a complete second partner review is required. Because if he's not performing sufficient review, there are two possible root causes. Maybe he's ethically biased, or maybe he don't have competence to perform the audit activity. So look at the root causes. Sometimes when audit manager don't do their work effectively, so we say that, okay, he needs some training. Okay, like for example, if I give you a question, give you an example, one time in ethics question, there was a situation that one of our audit team member has taken some gift from the client. One of our audit team member has taken some gift from client. The apparent impact is that we should remove that team member from audit team, or we should ask him to return the gift. But the ability to look at the root cause, in answer, we wrote that, okay, we should think about the policies of the firm, that how the policies of the firm permitted this gift. Okay, why there were no sufficient disclosures. We referred that, okay, our team members need some ethical training. So you should have an ability to look at the root causes which created that issue, rather than just talking on apparent impacts. Students should always look at information which do not corroborate. Corroborate means support. with other evidences. It can lead to misstatements being identified if there are any conflicting evidences. If there are any conflicting statements, you should have an ability to look at them. Some exam questions require students to evaluate the work already done by some audit team member. In those questions, use of skepticism is very important. Like normally in quality control questions, there are situations when the examiner asks you to evaluate the work of a particular audit team member, that okay, your colleague has done this audit. Now you have to evaluate the audit work of your colleague. So if the exam question says you that you have to evaluate the work already done, so at that time, use of skepticism is very important. In some exam questions, specifically in quality control questions, there are situations when the examiner asks you to evaluate the audit which has already been performed. Or like, for example, you are a second partner reviewing the work. So in that case, the use of skepticism that, okay, the evidences obtained were sufficient or not is very important. So the third professional skill that is expected from you people is skepticism in judgment. Skepticism means to question the data. Don't just rely on everything. And don't just question everything. Okay? You are not an investigator, you are an auditor. So you should have a professional skepticism. Don't just rely on everything. Don't just question everything. Use your judgment that where you have to rely and where you have to question. Where you can form conclusions and where you cannot form a conclusion. This is the skill expected from an audit. So I have highlighted points like you have to identify justified materiality level. You have to identify additional information. You have to prioritize the risk. These all things are relating to skepticism and judgment. But when we'll be doing the past paper practice sessions and when you will apply these skills, that will give you a real insight. The last professional skill which we have to discuss is commercial acumen. What is commercial acumen? This means that you should have a commercial sense when you are writing your answer. Now, this is very important when you are talking about business risk questions, because business risk is about looking at commercial point of view that requires commercial acumen. The commercial sense that, okay, here the business may face problems. Here there is a risk that profits may suffer. The commercial point of view. Going concern questions. Commercial acumen is very important. Due diligence questions. Commercial acumen, the commercial sense is very important. And in ethics questions, commercial acumen is very important. See, listen to me. When there is an ethical issue, we don't write just one point that, okay, decline the engagement. We just don't write one line. We suggest different options also. See, audit firm is there to do business. The audit partner also have children to feed. Audit partner also have his family. So he has to think from commercial point of view. You cannot be very much strict practically. You have to think about alternative options. Like, for example, if the client has given you some gift, if there is some situation of hospitality. So in the answers, we always write that some gifts are those which are routine, which are acceptable practices. Like, for example, on birthday, you may get some gift. So from commercial point of view, we don't start fighting that, okay, take away your gift. The client will say that, what are you doing? Practically just think that if a client comes and he gives you something on your birthday, as far as that gift is within the acceptable range, acceptable value, we accept those gifts. We don't say that, no, your money is not good. You are a biased person. You are bribing me. Just think from your commercial point of view, what are you doing? Your entire relation will go affected. So commercial acumen, obviously, we have to think about commercial acumen in such a way that we don't compromise ethics. But obviously, from commercial point of view, we have to show some flexibility. So commercial acumen is commercial acumen from client's perspective. When we are talking about business risk, due diligence, going concern. And from the audit firm's perspective, when we are talking about ethical issues. Like, for example, even when we write the point decline, we don't write just decline, we write politely decline. If you read the examiner answer, that is commercial acumen, that even if you have to say no, don't be too much aggressive. Politely decline. Try and convince. And we also write other options that, okay, we'll use the separate team. We'll use second partner review. We use different actions to mitigate that risk. Questions are set in commercially realistic scenario, ranging from private to public sector organization, not-for-profit organizations, and regulated industries. The examiner expects that you think about the commercial point of view. Candidates may be asked to demonstrate their commercial acumen. Acumen means sense, by assessing the business risk affecting the client at audit planning stage. For example, specific regulatory requirements or the impact of competition on future business. Factors affecting a client may highlight issues regarding the future trading success of the business. For example, there is an opportunity to expand the business, but consideration need to be given as to how this will affect the current operations. For example, if the management is saying that we are going towards a completely new line, a different segment, so you can identify from commercial point of view, you can highlight that if they will focus too much on a new business line, they will compromise their current business activities. So commercial acumen for evaluating for the client and also when looking for the firm. Candidates need to look at external constraints and opportunities. Constraint means external limitations. Like you can write that, okay, in the environment, which is explained in the question, there are limitations which the management should consider, and opportunities where relevant, and also consider the validity, reasonableness of any assumptions that organization may be working under given the external environment. For example, let me give you an example. Sometimes in going concern questions, the management makes an assumption that, okay, next year our sales will grow by this percentage. And as per the industry data given in the question, we only look at the data of the question. The industry data is showing a very slow growth, but the management is assuming that we will have a very big growth percentage. So from commercial acumen perspective, you will say that, okay, management is thinking in a wrong direction from commercial perspective, and it will affect their business. Okay. So candidates may show commercial acumen by assessing the impact of the engagement on the audit firm also. As I told you people earlier also, that commercial acumen is not from the client's perspective. It is from the perspective of the firm also. Like when, for example, if you are talking about auditing two competitors of same industry, so you always highlight that maybe one of the client may get annoyed. Maybe we have to leave one of the engagement due to confidentiality issues. So we have to think about commercial acumen, that whether leaving any client, so which client to leave? One which is generating lesser revenue, one which is requiring higher resources or lesser resources. So you should be thinking in that manner. This may be relevant in a scenario which requires evaluation of whether to accept an engagement. For example, whether audit firm is happy to be associated with the client or industry. Okay, so commercial acumen is about thinking from commercial point of view. For example, if the client is asking for a very early deadline, so you have to think that, okay, if we will commit a very early deadline, then later on it may lead to legal issues, because if we are not able to complete the assignment, or maybe in order to complete it earlier, we have to divert too many resources to this engagement, and that will affect our other businesses. So you should have a commercial point of view, that what is good for my client and what is good for my firm. You should explain that. Okay. Now, the key points which I have identified for you people, this professional skill can be evaluated in all questions. All questions of AAA exam are developed with commercial sense in mind. Commercial acumen is particularly evaluated in business risk, due diligence review, prospective financial information review. Commercial acumen may also be evaluated from firm's perspective. It can include situations when, in case of audit of two competing clients, firm may have to leave one client. So you have to think that which client we will leave. Okay. Students should consider impact of the action suggested on overall client engagement. For example, if any non-audit work is not possible for auditor to perform himself, the auditor can suggest alternative ways of resolving that issue by referring some other partner or by using ethical safeguards to reduce ethical threat. See, when we talk about practical life, You have to think about serving the client. They are our clients. They are giving us money. So we cannot just leave our client. We have to suggest them possible options. But obviously, we have to think about ethics also. But remaining in the ethical boundaries, we have to suggest that what possible ways can resolve the issue in a commercially sensible manner. Questions on going concern also require use of commercial acumen. I have already discussed that. Question management assumptions on commercial acumen. For example, in going concern, management is assuming that issues of company will be get sorted in a particular way. Those actions may not be commercially justifiable. For example, if management is taking wrong assumptions, so you can say that the approach, the assumption management is taking will lead to losses. Okay, so you should have an ability to think from commercial point of view. Specifically, when we talk about business risk questions, we question the management approaches. For example, I remember one question in business risk that was Chambers Company, one old past paper, in which the management spent a very big amount on marketing campaign of one segment. And that segment showed a decline in revenue despite of that. So you have to identify that maybe we are spending marketing in a wrong direction. Despite of so big marketing spending, we are not able to increase our revenues. So maybe we are doing mistakes from commercial sense. So you have to identify those issues. Commercial acumen also involves management focus on short-term problems. That, okay, the management is diverted on wrong issues. Commercial acumen also includes impact on firm of accepting a particular client. For example, client not agreeing to increase fees. So you can say that from commercial point of view, it is not beneficial to accept this client. Or client asking our firm to take some guarantees. Now you can say, even in the ethics answers, the examiner usually write this point, that we shouldn't be attending meetings with the client when they are going for a bank loan. One, that it is an ethical issue. And secondly, it is not advisable from commercial point of view. Because when the client will default, the bank may come again after us that, okay, you came for the meeting also. So why we should take someone guarantee from commercial point of view? Just think logically. If I'm going with my client for a bank loan negotiation, it is an ethical issue, it is an advocacy threat. But think from commercial perspective. If the client will go bad debt, then the bank may file a claim against us also, that we were also involved in that entire manipulation. So why we should take that exposure for our client? Okay. Commercial acumen includes business awareness, effective judgments, and an insight to understand the issues and to evaluate the issues from the insight of the business, that you should be able to understand that what the client's business and environment is about. Consider long-term impacts of issues and actions suggested. Okay. So if you look at it, in today's class, we have discussed different professional skills which are expected from the students. But in today's class, we have just talked about their theoretical aspects. Now, from the next class, we'll be having a series of past paper sessions in which I will draft complete past paper answers with you people. We will apply the professional skills while we'll be developing the answer. Okay. So if I sum up my today's class, you have 80 technical marks in auditing exam. You have to attempt only those 80 marks. You only have to attempt 80 marks requirements in the exam, but in a professional manner to get additional 20 marks. Okay, see, these 20 professional marks are not a separate requirement. You just have to attempt 80 marks requirements of auditing in a professional manner to get complete 100 marks. Okay, 4 professional skills: good communication, analysis and evaluation, skepticism and judgment, and commercial acumen. I hope that you people have understood my today's discussion. If you have any query, feel free to contact me. You all have my WhatsApp number. It's 0092-345-8099-831. So you people can contact me on my WhatsApp also if you have any query. Okay, so in the next class, we'll move forward towards series of past paper sessions in which we'll apply these professional skills. Thank you, everyone.